around like that. So yeah, there were people, mostly in the main centres, Durban, Cape Town, Maritzburg, so the sort of previously elite white universities of Natal, Wits and Cape Town were the sort of major draw cards for people that were interested in it. And increasingly, University of the Western Cape and then UDW, as those two became the sort of radicalized spaces. And then, interestingly, people dotted within the so-called Bantustan universities. Doleni Sodi, he was on the editorial board. I don't like to admit this because he used to be a friend of mine. The Communist Party boss, Braden Zamandi, was on the editorial board.
So how interesting, yeah? How is it like to work with these different people and touching on critical factors that were influencing, I like the in society.
Yeah.
So you looked at issues that were kind of like affecting society. Did you ever get resistance from authorities?
No, absolutely. There were often, we got resistance in two ways. One within the university departments, not from the research office, not from the fact that you were producing a journal, that was in fact quite favourably looked upon, but from colleagues who had this idiotic neo-positivist view that politics is a contamination, a variable that affects the objectivity of psychological outcomes. So there was a kind of disdain of the fact that we were engaging in politics. And there was this bluff that you could separate them out in a country like South Africa, as though you could separate it out. And increasingly that became untenable for them, because I was also involved in the detention movement here, against helping ex-detainees after detention. And increasingly the Psychological Society, which was incredibly conservative, which I never was a member of, started to realize that pressure was coming up on them, and they started to ask people to give talks about the psychological effects under detention and so on. And we recruited some of them to do detainee counselling and so on. But until that happened, until the increasing pressure of the apartheid government through the 80s happened, people were quite dismissive that this was a Mickey Mouse thing, that anybody could write for it. It was like crap, not very rigorous, that kind of thing. Where we got it, another resistance, was that we weren't accredited by the South African SAPC situation that accredited journals. And it was only at the break of apartheid, when that whole area of higher education got taken over. And then they backdated our accreditation, which means something in terms of people being paid out funds from university research incentives and so on, or universities getting the money for that. But we applied on a number of occasions and put all kinds of strategies. And I mean, it was clearly ideological, because the kind of responses that they came back to us with were just complete rubbish. They said the journal was a practitioner's journal. So when I pointed out to them, I said, who are the practitioners? We're not practitioners, it's not a clinical journal. This is a general journal, a socially oriented general journal of psychology. And I said to them, in any case, you've got 100 accredited journals. Because medics, orthopedic surgeons, you won't allow them because they're practitioners. I said, that's so they had all these
kind of...
Yeah, but that would waste another year, and then we just got fed up, because you had to submit paperwork and get, and we got, by that stage, people were on board. So all the heads of departments of psychology were sending motivations, because the journal can't motivate for itself to be accredited. It needs academics need to say, we publish in this thing, we want it accredited so our research can be acknowledged. And that was happening. And then they would send the reply to the journal of why you weren't accredited. So you'd get these idiotic, I've still got them kept. I mean, they were just outrageous. And then suddenly, in the early 90s, we got accreditation. So yeah, there was a lot of resistance. And some of the people, and I'll say this publicly, he was too clever to be blatantly resistant. But a guy who was head of psychology here, he was cautious about the journal. And then suddenly realized that, hey, I better put my money where the critical people are. He started to publish in it.
Oh.
Ronnie Miller, the guy who's just produced that very interesting book on Vygotsky.
Famously does.
Yeah. So, you know, people started to shift. So some of our critics in this department where I was working suddenly started to join in, you know, not join the editorial, but at least want to write book reviews or submit papers. So things did change. But in the beginning it was, and we got some more direct attacks. Blade and Zamandi wrote this one quite classical piece in the early numbers, lambasting industrial psychology as reactionary, as racist, as having a kind of patronizing attitude to black workers and that. And because lots of industrial psychology departments then, especially and still now, were strongly within the Afrikaans language universities, they just went for us. Within their own thing, they never sent it to us.
Oh, they never sent response.
Yeah, no, they sent it to, it appeared, one of their not an Afrikaans guy, one of the industrial psychologists wrote a note to us, accusing us of ideology and misrepresenting things, and you know, not taking seriously the reforms that were being done, and blah blah blah. So yeah, there was quite a lot of criticism.
What interests me is it's clearly obvious that psychology, especially critical thinkers, played a huge role in the struggle for apartheid. So my point goes back to why psychology. As you were growing up, why did you decide to do psychology?
Why did I decide to do psychology? That's an embarrassing thing that I have to answer now. When I was at university, I majored in philosophy and psychology. I had been quite a science boffin at school, and especially a maths boffin. So when I started university, I wasn't quite sure, so I was doing science and picked up psychology. And it didn't work for me, so I left it and went to work for 2 years in a science lab. And then I came back, and I still wasn't sure, so I did a few science subjects and then picked up philosophy and psychology again. And after the first term, I thought, no, I just don't want to do the science stuff. So I passed it and finished the year, and then moved into majoring in philosophy and psychology. And I really enjoyed both of it. I mean, I was quite lucky because it was an interesting psychology department, because that's not always what can be said about psychology departments at the time. There were some interesting people there, some interesting approaches that they had to teaching. So that's what I did. I did both these subjects as my majors, and I was the sort of star philosophy student in my third year, and they wanted me to do honours. Yeah, and I was quite keen. Because I was doing well, and a friend of mine had just finished philosophy honours, and he couldn't get a job. You know, then as a white person, you didn't have a problem. You got a degree, you got a job. He was trying to get some journalism work, and I thought, you know, I don't mind psychology. It's quite interesting. I need a job. You know, I didn't come from a rich family. I needed a job. So I applied for psychology honours and they accepted me. And I mean, the whole range of honours stuff didn't appeal to me. And the department didn't sell general or research psychology. It was quite a strongly clinical sell. So I thought, you know, that looks interesting. I mean, I quite enjoyed the psychopathology course because the guy taught us some Foucault. Yeah. So that's how I, like, by accident, for just thinking, I just got to get a job. So I applied for at that stage, you could apply for clinical, the stream within honours. Now it's only a master's. So I got in, and I was the last year anywhere in the country that did honours, internship, came back to do masters. So that's how I got into it, sort of by accident in some way, and then wrote my masters on Lacan.
Interesting enough, still talking about Lacan, I read a piece where you were looking at psychoanalysis and Lacan. How does it fit with your thinking, Lacan and psychoanalysis? Are they talking to each other, or are they completely different streams altogether?
No, Lacan put himself forward as a psychoanalytic practitioner. I mean, I think that British historian of social science, John Forrester, who's written quite a lot about psychoanalysis, I mean, he's made an interesting point about Lacan, and what he said is that he said, unless you understand that Lacan's thinking is that he's thinking about being a practical, practicing psychotherapist, psychoanalyst, you don't understand his work. And I think he's quite right. I mean, Lacan is full of nonsense at a lot of level, and some of the stuff is just outrageous and quite funny, and people don't catch the jokes just because it's written so weird. But his concern was about the practice of psychoanalysis, and his main work in the 20 years of his seminar, which is slowly coming out in English now, they're all out in French. He presumed two things: that you were familiar with Freud, and he presumed that you were a training analyst. So that's who he's targeting his audience to. So if other people went there, he said, no, that's fine, but that's who I'm wanting to talk to about these ideas. If other people find them useful, that's good. But that's who he was targeting, because he had a big moan about two things. One, that people had misinterpreted Freud, and I think to a large extent he was correct in many, many instances. I mean, he overdid it a bit. And related to that, he thought that the misinterpretations were taking the radical edge of Freud, and he particularly criticized Freud's daughter for that. And the other point that he said was that there's a kind of conservatism in the practice of psychoanalysis which upset him, because he said it's becoming a kind of conservative, protectionist discipline, and he said, you don't understand psychoanalysis. It's not that. That's not what Freud was trying to do. He was trying to disrupt why people get sick, trying to disrupt an idea of what makes people sick in a society. So in that sense, he got into quite a lot of trouble with the International Association of Psychoanalysis, because he was forever challenged, and he got kicked out. Lacan got kicked out of the International Psychoanalytic Association because of his views around training of analysts. And in his cheeky way, he wrote a paper about it called excommunication. Now, you know, excommunication is a religious term.
Yes.
And that's what he was saying. I've been kicked out of the church.
Yeah.
The church have excommunicated me because they don't like my ideas, which was sort of true. But most of his work was about wanting to understand